She appears before you, glowing, alluring, and seemingly vibrant. Her aura can entrance, her laugh can draw you close, and her look offers the very focus men desire. But what is underneath is not often purity, nor enigma, but routine disguised as appeal. Julius Evola once noted that modern eros, shorn of its holy aspect, turns to simple consumption, and most men fail to see this fact until it's past time. What you mistake for closeness might be just a pattern she has traced countless times already. Each caress, each knowing look, every word delivered with precision stems not from originality but from recall. Evola cautioned that when love is split from the sublime, it turns to a market exchange where bodies are traded like currency. Thus, what seems like passion to you could merely be one more trade in her limitless round of encounters. A woman, having known numerous men, bears a specific polish, a smoothness in bonding that seems like expertise. Yet Evola would not label this expertise. It is debasement, the gradual decay of the holy into the worldly. He stated, "Where there is no more a higher ideal, sex turns to the pastime of the masses. What men perceive as confidence is frequently the remainder of fatigue, a soul worn down by routine." Note how swiftly she passes boundaries that ought to require respect. Real closeness, Evola maintained, pertains to a higher level, a thing symbolic of joining between soul and body. When it is offered too freely, too informally, it is no more joining but scattering. The holy fire has been swapped for a brand moved ceaselessly from one to the next, leaving just fumes where there ought to have been brightness. Watch her wording when she talks about men. Are her tales filled with conclusions, of letdowns, of constant starts that fall to nil? Evola noted that modern femininity in decay pursues newness without aim, enjoyment without stability. If you note the same path echoed across various names and locations, you are not noting hymns, you are noting a design etched by decay. Her very eyes reveal her past. The stare of a woman untried by routine keeps mystery, a calm power that cannot be feigned. Yet the eyes of a woman who has moved through endless meetings often shift uneasily, failing to anchor themselves in one man for very long. Evola detailed this state as the lack of form, where the female ideal wanders into scattering, spreading itself over limitless wants. Men frequently confuse this scattering with liberty. They label her freed, autonomous, strong, since she bears no reluctance, no opposition. But liberty lacking transcendence is just bondage to impulse, a submission veiled as power. Evola cautioned that the current worship of liberation was really a fall into turmoil, where impulse poses as decision. Her comfort with bodily contact is often lauded by people who are naive. She shifts without the pause of the pure, she steps over lines without shaking, and she makes what ought to seem holy look informal. Yet that comfort is not assurance, it is the decay of respect. And Evola would name it precisely what it is, the profaning of eros, its drop from shrine to storefront. This is the reason numerous men are misled. They think they've discovered one rare, one special, since they've confused presentation with genuineness. They cannot guess that what seems so unique to them has been echoed scores of times before with peers. Evola's caution yet resounds. When closeness is split from the higher, it turns to a constant festival, bright lamps hiding a hollow trip that always finishes in the same spot. When you hear intently, you start to see how she handles the past. The facts of prior partners slip off her tongue like they were no more significant than a weekend getaway. Holy ties recounted as stories reveal how routine numbs significance. Evola noted that once the vertical aspect of love fails, life is experienced just horizontally, extended wide, but not profound. A woman who has experienced too many men gets skilled in emotive drama. She knows the exact timing of contact, the slant of her look, the beat of her laugh. Yet what appears as a native talent is often just choreography refined by rehearsal. Evola once cautioned that modern eros is not impulse but display, a theater show where men buy entries with their spirits. She will frequently talk of autonomy, of how she is owned by none, how her liberty defines her. Yet Evola removed this facade by reminding us that what newness terms freedom is, often bondage to impulse. She is not freed from men, she is bound to the approval men supply. In this pattern, her uniqueness dissolves, turning into what Evola depicted as a limp power, open to each flow but anchored in nothing. See how swiftly she adjusts herself to you. She echoes your phrases, takes on your wit, even foresees your feelings. This seems like true love bonding, but it is just the reaction of one used to perpetual remaking. Evola would name it dispersal of being, the failure to keep a set shape, because one has melted too many times prior. Men mix up this flexibility with profoundness, but flexibility lacking grounding is just liquidity. Water fits the form of all vessels, but water cannot construct. A woman dispersed over endless vessels has no shape remaining of her own. Evola instructed that real femininity is form-holding, holy acceptance, not formless liquidity posing as connection. Her way of handling disputes offers another peek into her history. Instead of viewing arguments as trials to fortify joining, she employs them as chances to menace withdrawal. She understands that going is always possible since she has done it prior. Evola cautioned that the limitless round of starts wears away the nerve to persist, and only persistence can check the higher truth of love. Digital networks have just amplified these designs. The platform Evola mentioned has grown from the parlor to the display, where acting never ceases. Each update, each arranged picture, each look into the lens is one more practice for notice. The craving for approval is constant, because once holy closeness is replaced with acclaim, quiet feels like demise. See also her companions, or perhaps the lack of them. Women set in real profoundness usually maintain tight links with other women who keep them responsible. Yet a woman hooked on male notice will be encircled chiefly by men, each a possible supply of energy, presence, or approval. Evola viewed this as the reversal of natural order, the female ideal dispersed outward, declining to fix itself in shape. And in the calm times, the facade drops. You spot the uneasy eyes, the obsessive checking of texts, the failure to be calm in one vicinity. This is not enigma, it is hollowness. Evola's assessment is plain. When eros misplaces its holy root, what abides is a limitless hunger that no amount of men can ever sate. The manner she welcomes haste is revealing. Meetings intensify with abnormal swiftness, as if closeness were just another move in a screenplay. What seems impulsive to you is merely efficiency, reaching the end point she has journeyed to endless times. Julius Evola named this the lack of transcendence in eros, where the holy road is supplanted by shortcuts that rob love of its enigma. Think on how she talks about love itself. The wording is frequently jaded, sprinkled with sarcasm, bearing none of the wonder that attends genuine first meetings. She has sampled too many starts, and each fresh one tastes poorer than the prior. When eros misplaces its higher ideal, Evola stated, it turns to just appetite, ceaselessly hunting but never fulfilled. You will equally see her dependence on novelty. Tedium comes fast, regularity chokes her, and balance feels like inertia. Yet love that lasts must go through the commonplace, for it is in the normal that real joining proves itself. A woman who cannot stand stillness has been conditioned by routine to want only flame, never heat. Her very laugh can show the erosion. It comes too freely, cued too precisely, as if each line given to her has before been noted from a dozen others. Genuine joy is unrepeatable, but hers bears the burden of performance. Evola depicted this sort of closeness as display, where the motion supplants the essence. See her amid dispute, and you will spot another fact. Instead of resolving strain, she militarizes non-presence, pulling back affection as if it were currency. Closeness becomes a negotiation tool, presented and kept back according to her benefit. In this system, love is not offered, it is swapped. The identical pattern appears in her comradeships. Rather than getting strength in links with women who hold her responsible, she encircles herself with men who act as resources. Each one gives notice, praise, or emotive help, stopping her from ever meeting isolation. What you construe as appeal is in reality management of a system built for ceaseless validation. Quiet, too, disturbs her, where authentic bonding allows for calm. She fills every gap with talk, tales, or motion. She has realized that quiet reveals the hollowness below the mask, so she hides it under sound. Profoundness cannot be where one is terrified of quiet. Examine carefully at her tales of the past. They are refined, selected, designed to position her ever as the logical one, the misread, the unfortunate. Yet variances seep out, schedules move, specifics blur, justifications increase. What you are noting is not recall but story command, formed to keep you involved while hiding the routine. In each motion, in each term, there are hints of the identical truth. Closeness cut to performance, love debased into consumption. Evola maintained that when eros drops from its vertical line, it becomes festival, blinding, loud, but hollow at its center. To the unskilled eye, this festival looks like life itself. Yet to the man who peers intently, it is just lights hiding rot. Her posture toward want reveals another fracture. Want, in its holy shape, carries respect, a recognition that joining is not just bodily, but emblematic of something higher. Still for her, want is an instrument, summoned, shown, retracted, without enigma or stability. Evola mentioned this as the profaning of eros, where flame is cut to fuel for fleeting appetites. See how she reacts to devotion. Rather than viewing loyalty as rare, she anticipates it, nearly requires it, as though it were her due. Thankfulness wanes since she has had the attention of numerous men before you. When a thing is always provided, it ceases to evoke wonder. The round of starts leaves its imprint on her power to last. Every new man seems like a clean start, a rush of potential, a narcotic that stirs the thrill of newness. Yet that thrill fails under the burden of routine, and she knows just one answer: flight. As Evola said it, current eros becomes addicted to intensity, while unable to maintain shape. Even the way she presents ethics gives her away. Queries about prior decisions are deflected with the language of liberation, presented as proof of progress. Still behind the speech of freedom rests evasion of accountability, evasion of the fact that routine erodes the holy. Liberty without system is not progress, but entropy. In her vicinity, you may feel an early high, but see how quickly it is trailed by uncertainty. You question if you are special to her or just the next in line. This is not delusion. It is the impact of someone who has melted closeness into regularity. Evola stated that once love is shorn of transcendence, the person becomes nameless, one amid many. Her link with worldly life frequently mirrors the same decay. Pleas for monetary help, faint hints about living standards, the endless checking of your readiness to provide. These are not ever mishaps. They show a habit built by rounds of removal. Where love has turned to exchange, kindness turns to duty. She frequently mistakes volatility for passion. Fiery disputes, theatrical reunions, emotive tempests, these are shown as proof of profoundness. But real depth is stable, quiet, able to outlast silence and strife. Turmoil is not passion. It is reliance on intensity, the dark aspect of repetition. Watch her jealousy toward other females. It is not the normal defense of someone who prizes what is sacred, but the turf guarding of someone shielding her supply of validation. She weakens rivals slyly, confirms your focus is watched, and responds with animosity to female contests. The uncertainty is not about you. It is about her reliance on being desired. At the heart of all these designs lies a single truth. Shape has been lost. Evola maintained that real eros is form-holding, able to construct, sustaining, transcending. But once dispersed across endless meetings, that shape melts into dust. What abides is motion without origin, appeal without mooring, want without fate. Think how she nears the future. When queried about lengthy aims, her words spin endlessly without settling. Schemes melt into fuzzy notions, stipulations, or pauses, guaranteeing she is never really tied to stability. Evola depicted this as newness's refusal to set roots, existing only for the high of the present instant. Her feeling of autonomy is frequently celebrated, but autonomy lacking substance is facade. She proclaims herself self-reliant, yet her living is calmly upheld by the steady engagement of men. Transit, emotive help, presents, and chances flow from the system she has built. What seems as strength is often just dependence dispersed over numerous sources. See at how she construes equality. Rather than pursuing harmony between male and feminine ideals, equality turns to a weapon employed to wipe accountability for decisions made. Real equality requires responsibility, yet her liberty requires none. In this manner, the language of advancement conceals nothing more than self-concern. Her feelings move in rounds of performance. When she wants something, warmth streams easily. When conflict occurs, heat freezes instantly. Love turns conditional, an instrument of management rather than an authentic expression of the heart. Evola would see this as the collapse of eros into sheer utility. Her very crises are doubtful. Urgencies arrive with strange timing, just when your focus wanes, or when you start asserting autonomy. These tempests require your resources, your vicinity, your attention, but they settle quickly once her wants are met. What seems like turmoil is often planned, a drama of need that guarantees control. She will frequently talk with contempt about normal life. Regularity, balance, and predictability feel choking to her, since she has confused drama for profoundness. Yet the power to endure ordinary days is what splits lust from love. Without this ability, she is always chained to the craving for beginnings. See how quickly she regularizes behaviors that ought to stir hesitation. Numerous partners are depicted as exploration, past ties as meaningless, and your unease is framed as insecurity. This verbal tactic ensures that you are always the one probed, never her. In such a dynamic, fact is hidden beneath societal banners. Where form has dissolved, loyalty cannot take root. Even intimacy carries an artificial rhythm. Moments of closeness follow predictable patterns, often tied to tension or reward. Desire is managed like a resource, offered when she needs to hold you close, withdrawn when she seeks to punish or control. What should be spontaneous becomes protocol. Her self-view depends not on internal stillness, but on external mirrors. Compliments, texts, likes, and passing notice keep her afloat. Without these, her identity begins to shake, for it was never anchored within. Evola named this the condition of scattering, the loss of a center that can endure silence. She prospers on motion. Nights out, fresh exploits, constant changes of scenery, anything to keep the hunger fed. Yet persistence is the soul of love, and stillness its foundation. Without the nerve to dwell in the ordinary, passion burns hot, but quickly turns to ash. Her wording about men often reveals contempt hidden under charm. Quips about ineptness, wry remarks about predictability, and informal generalizations build the impression that she has seen it all before. And maybe she has. But in that closeness rests tiredness, not wisdom. Even the manner she retreats is ritualized. The phone gets silent, the heat cools, the presence wanes in rehearsed stages. These are not the moves of uncertainty. They are the departures of someone who has left many times prior. What feels jarring to you is routine to her. At the core of it all is the lack of mystery. Enigma belongs to what is rare, to what has not been practiced, to what holds shape and resists scattering. When everything is familiar, when nothing feels holy, enigma dies. And with the death of enigma, so too dies the possibility of real love. When you move back, you begin to see the larger design. Every particular, every motion, every tale is not an isolated defect, but evidence of a wider decline. It is not simply about her past, it is about what her history has done to her form. Evola maintained that once form is lost, the feminine ceases to uplift and begins to scatter. Her relationships no longer develop like journeys, they echo like cycles. Severity rises, fervor peaks, failure follows, and then the stage clears. Each man enters believing he is special, but he is only acting a role penned long before he arrived. To confuse that cycle for love is to confuse repetition for destiny. The biggest deception rests in how intoxicating the acting can be. She can cause you to feel as though you are the first, the sole, the chosen one. But what you are truly sensing is not connection, but practiced seduction. Lacking the sacred, seduction becomes a trade, and every trade in time demands its price. Even her beauty can be part of the facade, for beauty split from reverence becomes a mask instead of a revelation. Evola stated that true eros bears a vertical axis. It points beyond itself to something immortal. When that axis is absent, beauty still glitters, but it blinds instead of guiding. You will equally notice that responsibility is absent. Faults are externalized, outcomes blamed on circumstance or others, never on the self. The round persists because nothing is ever owned, nothing is ever probed. Without accountability, there can be no transformation. This is why men who believe they can change her fall into ruin. They think their loyalty will be enough to restore enigma, to reignite the holy flame. But routine has already worn down the soil. The ground itself cannot sustain new roots. What they confuse for possibility is in truth a void that eats their effort. The current world encourages men to ignore these facts. It clothes decadence in slogans, calling chaos freedom, calling routine experience, calling erosion empowerment. But under the rhetoric lies the same void that Evola depicted as the hallmark of decline. A society that profanes eros, profanes itself. Remember, the user's provided text contains anomalous formatting, such as paragraphs ending mid-sentence and new paragraphs starting unexpectedly, e.g., and her gaze promises the kind of attention men crave. But what lies beneath is not always innocence nor mystery, but repetition dressed up as charm, is a single paragraph. What you feel when you encounter such a woman is not destiny, but decadence. The fire that burns in her eyes is not mystery, but recall. Every motion, every move, every word belongs to a script practiced with countless others. And once you see the script, the charm dissolves. Thus, the decision lands on you. Either you permit yourself to be dazzled by the carnival, or you learn to look for the holy fire that yet exists in scarce places. Additional text provided by the user, to be rewritten while maintaining length meaning. Evola thought that even in decline, the possibility of the sublime remained for those who sought it. But that needs discretion, the courage to see beyond acting, and the strength to walk away when the form is already gone.